KUAM News Hotspot is brought to you by
Pacific Points, Do More, Get More, and Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
How about everyone, and welcome to the Hotspot. We're actually kind of flipping the script today. We're going to start with the hub, and we'll get to the Hotspot at the bottom of the hour. And I'd like to introduce our guest for today. We've got a Democratic Party spokesperson, Chris Carillo, senior advisor for the the Camacho ADA campaign, and our regular guest, UOG professor, Dr. Ron McNinch.
Hi, I'm Shawn Gumataotao.
Ron, I think you just did I not say your name, Shawn?
Just checking. I'm listening. I got you.
All right, that's Shawn Gumataotao. He is a senior advisor for the Camacho ADA campaign. Sorry about that, Shawn.
No worries.
Let's get started with talking about these debates and forums. I think, Ron, you just came from one, which is the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce, which only the Lou Leon Guerrero, Josh Tenorio team showed up. And yesterday there was a forum for the Guam Association of Realtors, which only Governor Felix and Senator Ada showed up by. So what is the impact, and let me start with you, Ron, of these no face-to-face debates so far?
Yeah, it's a really short-sighted and childish effort by both teams, and I'm sorely disappointed in both teams. The candidates, the governor and the former governor, need to sit down and hammer out a schedule of debates and act like adults. That's the reality.
Yeah. Shawn, the big loser here is the voters, right?
As a guy who has prepared the MSPJ debate in 2002 and has obviously been part of these events for quite a long time, I agree that these are important venues, and these have been going back to my understanding into the might have been into the 80s, into the in the mid 80s to the early 90s, that the electorate has had a chance to see at least one face-to-face debate. And I just came from the University of Guam for the coin toss for the great debate, and there was one candidate there, and I guess for all of us, is it important? Yes. Will it happen? It remains to be seen. But the biggest thing for everyone is that we need to have a chance to hear from both candidates.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, forums and debates are great because they allow both candidates to be heard by one audience, and we're able to identify the difference between the policies, right? The governor had agreed to several debates over the course, and she's debated with Congressman San Nicolas on several debates, and the former governor refused to show up to some events, and for whatever reason or perceived slight that he might have felt or whatever it was, it put the governor in a difficult position now, which she has to show up and be dictated to when her partner or her challenger is going to show up. So it's a difficult position the governor is in. I do believe that we need to have some debates. Hopefully they can work something out before the primary, before the general. But it's hard when you commit to things and other people don't commit to those same things. It puts you in a difficult position.
But then remember, the gap between the primary election and the general election is 7 weeks. And like I said, in the history of these programs, there's really only been 2 major events. And the biggest one, actually, was only one event for a really long time, and that was the UOG Great Debate. A lot of students put a lot of time into that, and it outlasted even the press club, the old press club, the MSPJ, the Association of Asian American Journalists. It's outlasted those, and those are big events. And yes, they are important for us. And as we've seen over the last 20 years, that has changed. The adding of debates in a 7-week period, it's very challenging for anyone to think that they can do 7 events, 10 events in 7 weeks. And I think campaigns are, they have the opportunity to work together, and I know that they had between Jerry Crisosimo and Roy Respicio, and we're here now. So we have 4 weeks left to go. And we still got events to give, so I think that's where we're going.
But Ron, we've gotten into a situation where both camps are picking and choosing what they think is more advantageous to them, And I see Sean's point that, they can't do, if there's too many debates, it may not be practical for them to do it. So how do we resolve this then?
My opinion, and again, I was a little bit strong in my.
You're
my
fired up.
I was irritated.
It's coffee.
It's the coffee at the Hyatt. Okay,
Good coffee.
Good coffee. That's maybe too strong for me. Here's the thing. Okay, is I believe it's staff. It's not really the governor and former governor that's really driving this. I think it's the staff that are driving this, and that's why I think if the governor and former governor sit down and just come up with a mutual schedule and agree, I think that's all that it'll take. Because really, it's not healthy for the public to see pieces of this and pieces of that and then try to knit them together. And because really what both candidate teams are missing is that you're going to have a room full of your own followers anywhere you go. The debates and forums are not about the room full of followers. It's about the media being able, in the live casts that come out of them, that then the people see in real time both candidates. And that's the advantage. And that's where the middle is, and that's where this election is going to fall, is the people in the middle are going to elect the next governor, not the camps. It's going to be the middle.
But also, there's also been a trend nationwide where gubernatorial races, senatorial races, these debates are now falling from the wayside with the access to all the information that's out there, from podcasts to programs like the Hub.
And
that they can basically get their information and make decisions.
Sure, but I think, and I'll get to, but I think the benefit is for the voter is to be able to see the two teams side by side and being able to gauge it. Because if you're just viewing them from their particular silo of preference, if you will,
right.
The Republican silo and then the Democratic silo, you can't really see a comparison between two different sides trying to talk about their positions on very, very important issues. Chris.
Well, and Shawn's point is correct, right? Podcasts, social media posts, targeted ads to meet your people is what happens, and we've seen it from the Gumataotao camp. They've done a series of 14 or 15 one-hour podcasts with no pushback from anyone, right? They're just saying this is our truth and this is what we believe and this is what we say.
Are you subscribed and follow us?
I don't subscribe, but I do see them. I do
Yeah.
see them on social media. What I'm saying is that a debate is an actual chance to examine each other's record. So when Felix goes out and says there's drugs is coming in at all this pace, but we see that during Felix's time he captured 6 pounds of meth per year. And in Governor Leon Guerrero's time, she's capturing 125 pounds of meth a year.
That's the same thing with Ginger. Again, like that was that same report that we asked the last time. So I guess we're still waiting for that report from the administration.
We've seen
it's not your role,
so many
but it's
media
the role
reports.
of the administration.
Right,
we're all waiting for that.
We said that you can review media reports that show 40 pounds of meth was caught here, 6 pounds of meth, right? Yeah. So there's actual evidence. And when they're both on the stage and they talk about the issues and they talk about their record and they get checked on their record or they get checked on their lack of achievement, it's a good thing for the public to see. They can differentiate between the candidates and what's noise and what's actual fact.
Yeah, especially when we're looking at the last 4 years.
Exactly.
Not what happened.
Look, the governor is proud to stand on the record. I'm telling you right now, she's going to be proud. She's going to be proud to stand on her record.
Yeah, but it goes back to what happened the last 4 years.
We're getting better debates right here on.
Yeah, I think so. We're okay.
That's my point. All right, let's move on. Speaking of podcasts, Mike Sineklis, Delegate Mike Sineklis, recently appeared on a podcast with Governor Camacho, and he talked about supposedly a $9 million benefit to the Bank of Guam for the $300 million ARPA deposit that's sitting in the Bank of Guam that's being reserved for, I believe, for the construction of a new hospital. Can you elaborate on what his point was?
No, I can't speak for Congressman Sineklis. From what just like you all have got to, if you watched the podcast, On the Trail with Felix and Tony, he mentioned that. I know there was another outlet that might have touched on that issue as well. I don't have all the technical details of it. But the congressman's coming at it from his experiences on the Hill primarily and in that process. So again, I can't speak for Nestor, but it sounds like there might be an issue, and I think that maybe journalists could maybe take a deeper dive if that's the case.
Yeah, well, we did before I asked Chris, we did check with the Department of Administration put out a statement explaining their position on it. And let me just read this one paragraph.
Please.
Department of Administration has full responsibility for decision making and ensuring where and how ARPA or other federal fund advances are managed. To be clear, no one had given instructions to DOA as to where or how ARPA or any federal fund advance should be invested. DOA followed the law and invested in a fund which in turn invests in federal obligations. This is considered a safe investment. This investment also provides our government with additional interest revenue that is rolled back into the ARPA fund for program use. DOA is concerned only that capital invested is secure and the resultant income is as high as such a risk-free investment will allow. So they say it's proper.
But this is the first time we're all hearing of it, right? And
No, it's not the first time.
When did you hear it on the Hill? When did you hear it at the
We've heard it in legislative hearings going back to last summer.
Okay.
Senator Taitagui had asked Ed Byrne on the floor.
Right.
He said that money is not in the Bank of Guam. It's in an interest-bearing account,
Did-
away and aside. And this is not new that it hasn't been in the
Right,
Bank
right.
of Guam.
And Chris, did they say where? They didn't.
You can FOIA them. I'm not sure where
I'm
it
not sure
is.
either, so.
I'm not privy to that information, but we do know that it's not in the Bank of Guam. So this whole line of
Well, actually, it is in the Bank of Guam.
it's in a different in an
Yeah.
investment vehicle that's not benefiting the Bank of Guam. It's a stable. It's in fact I don't think it's in the Bank of Guam at all. And if you read the statement, it says it's not in the Bank of Guam. So it's misinformation, and it's been peddled for months and months and months.
Yeah, and I'm not a banker, but I think the big picture is that
Neither am I.
if a bank has a big pot of money and is able to use that and it has to pay it when someone demands payment from that
Sure.
account, but they can use it for investments or whatever they do to make money for themselves. I think that was the point, but I don't know because I'm not a banker, so I can't adequately explain. Are you a banker?
No.
Ron? Okay.
Well,
But it is fun watching these discussions. It's much more interesting than watching two candidate teams that don't debate each other. At least the minions can come out and talk about
Minions?
these
yeah.
things.
Come
well,
on, we're a little bit bigger than minions.
I'm a minion. I'm a minion.
Well, he's kind of a minion.
yeah.
All right. On that note, we're going to take a short break and be back with more right after this. All right, we're back with the Hub, and time to move on to another topic. The governor recently came back from the first ever Pacific Islands Summit, hosted by the White House and President Joe Biden, attended by all the leaders of the various Pacific Islands. From all indications, all reports, it was a very successful event. She came back and she said that she's going to push for membership in the Pacific Islands Forum, which is a specific group that's composed of the leadership of the Pacific Islands, both in the North and the South Pacific. An article came out following that statement, and it quoted several Pacific Island leaders saying they were concerned about Guam's membership because I think they view Guam as maybe a surrogate for the United States, and that Guam would be pushing United States interests in a forum, a group, an organization that's supposed to be primarily for Pacific Island groups. And so let me start with you, Chris, your reaction.
Well, it's important for Guam to have a seat on this council because Guam is the largest island in this region. We do have the closest relationship with the United States. That being said, the governor's actions up there is trying to ensure that the treatment of these islands is fair and equitable. That that we're receiving enough COFA funds so that the citizens can migrate here, so that the COFA agreement is in alignment with human rights, making sure that infrastructure is helped put up there, and all of those things. So it's important for Guam to have a voice on the commission. It's not going to be in charge of the commission, or she'll be one of the seats. And I think it's a good thing for Guam, and it's a good thing for our region.
But what about Pacific Island leaders' concerns that Guam is going to be like a surrogate for the U.S.?
Well, they may perceive it that way, but I don't think that that's the governor's intention, and I don't think that's the United States' intention, right? They want to. What the governor wants to do is, and it's not just for this governor; it's for the next governor and moving forward, so that these Compact of Free Association migrants, when they come to America, when they come to Guam or Arkansas or Hawaii or these other hubs where they're going, that their rights are followed, to make sure that their islands have the correct infrastructure they need, health care, access to those things, and if they need federal aid, that we can go and push for federal aid for these.
And Shawn, I think boosting their concern is the fact that Governor Leon Guerrero was invited to the summit as a member representative of the U.S. delegation.
Well, it was as an observer to
Yeah.
the event. So, but as you know, because the territories are under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Interior, any of those types of matters would go through that. But I want to say that perhaps the reasoning why was, but I think it was 2014 at least in an Australian Broadcasting Corporation story, that they invited the French Polynesia and New Caledonia to join the Pacific Island Forum, which makes some sense to be able to ask to do that. But again, the process it's not just a one and done. I think that the concerns of the island nations are very important, and the Biden administration must hear those concerns. I think it's fair. Will there be a lot of U.S. intervention because of it? I doubt it. Remember that these are all independent nations that are part of this. There's a worry about China getting their hooks on some of the island nations, and then looking at investing, which could create a different type of atmosphere policy-wise here in the region.
So you agree then? You agree that Guam should be part of the Pacific?
Again, I think there's a process. The process that is it really a process? Is she really underway? Both Chris and I don't know. That's the big deal. Just because you say it, but the State Department is not the end all. There's a big monster in there called the U.S. Department of Interior. Right. There's the White House as well. That at some point, if they're not, you're an observer. That's just, you can watch everything, but you won't have really any say. So hopefully that'll change soon.
Yeah. Ron, got any thoughts on that?
Sure.
The U.S. won't give us a seat at the compact negotiation, so might as well go to the Pacific Forum and get a seat, right?
Sure. And by the way, I'm going to be out for 2 weeks. So if don't think that don't think Nestor fired me today. Basically, so I won't be at the table in the next 2 weeks. I heard this guy from the University of Hawaii quacking about this in a really pejorative way. Obviously, a lot of the people doing a lot of the talking about Guam and the United States really probably don't know what they're talking about. How little they understand how the U.S. and Guam often don't get along. So if you're afraid that you go to the table and you're going to get along, they might just see the opposite. That's one little point. The other point is China does have its hooks and everything. They're in all of these panels, and they block people from being on these panels. And I think this is a result or an abstraction of the cancel culture that is keeping people out of things. I think it's great the governor went to this meeting, and I think we should have all governors go to as many of these kinds of meetings as possible to at least open the lines of communication, even if they don't have a formal seat at the table. Just showing up, is good. Showing up is 90% of life in the field of diplomacy, and so we've got to have that voice there.
And that's right, because Governor Camacho also attended the PIF numerous times during his administration with the former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and the like. So it's not out of the realm that they do attend.
Okay, please note, we have consensus right here. On that note, we're going to take another break and be back with more of The Hub right after this. All right, we are back, and we've been talking too much about the gubernatorial race, so let's talk about some of the other races. What do you think are the issues that are driving the delegate race, and who do you think's got an edge right now? Go ahead, Shawn.
When I look at the delegate race, it's what is their position on federal policy relative to Guam and how well they're able to articulate it. I think I've seen across different platforms that they've kind of spent a little bit too much time talking about what they've done locally. I do want to hear more into what they plan to do once they get on the Hill. And that, as a voter like all of us, that I want to know what they plan to do there, and how does it affect the federal programs that are delivered here, whether it's defense, whether it's, we just talked about state, if you will, interior for sure, obviously because of our role, and we have the parks, we have quite a number of those assets here. But yeah, I want to hear more about the federal policy.
As a Republican, do you think Jim Moylan has distinguished himself better than Dr. Judy Wampat?
I think they're both just working through in these events to kind of articulate that. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but they're with each engagement, with each time talking about it, it's getting a little bit better. But I mean, the whole community wants to see them both have a command of the federal policy for Guam.
Chris, what do you think the issues are that are driving the delegate race, and how do you think Dr. Wampat's doing?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Shawn had to say, right? How are they going to deal up there in the Hill? And I think that Speaker Wampat has a track record of being a person that can work with both sides of the aisle. She was a speaker for 5 terms. She's got a lot of policy through. She's tenacious. When she wants something done, she speaks to everyone. She comes to agreements with people. And she's a great leader, right? So Senator Moylan has been doing a lot of legislation that, gets to but doesn't have a funding source. Gets here, but is not able to push it through. So you have one person that can work with others, and another person that doesn't, and uses a lot of press releases and social media to attack others. So I think that because Speaker Wampat has been so engaged in foreign relations, especially in this area, being the president of the APIL, going to Washington to get resources for that. She has a lot of connections. She's been spending time up in Washington, D.C. the last few weeks, meeting with important people and important Democrats that she's going to work with, and talking to the other side, seeing where they can find points where they can stand together. So in my opinion, I think that Judy's ahead a little bit, but it remains to be seen. The voters are going to tell us at the end of the day. But I think that Speaker Wampat has a proven track record that we know as Chamorro people we can count on her.
Okay, Ron, do you think the two candidates have been able to distinguish themselves, and are there issues that kind of separate them? And what are your thoughts on who's articulating their positions the best?
First, there are a lot of very strong and important differences between these two candidates. The problem is they're both just so nice. They're way too nice to each other when there are these important contrasting differences. Moylan believes that everyone should vote for political status. Wampat doesn't believe that. And she said it. I mean, that was what was said. She says, later people can vote. And he said, no, let people vote today. Those kinds of highlights need to be distinguished for the public, and the public needs to see these kinds of differences. Wampat also had a great point about making sure Guam's included in every single bill at the Congress. That was a great point. The debate or forum today was very good. It showed us some of that, but they're not really contrasted very well. And I think Moylan probably said the same thing. Yeah, absolutely get Guam on every bill. The key point that nobody ever talks about, and we've got to get our public and community to talk about, is we're going to be absolutely hobbled at the U.S. Congress until we get a voice at the U.S. Senate, whether it's informal or formal. We get a seat at that table where half of the legislative process actually happens. We have no voice there. And so whoever is our delegate, their prime directive should be getting a voice at the other house, and then we can actually get things done.
Yeah, like a shadow senator, like the one that D.C. has.
Or use a Tennessee Act, right? To
absolutely.
Get it in play, sit down, and now you're it.
Is that another consensus?
Well, I think the one other important difference is women's reproductive rights and the choice. I mean, I know Dr. McNinch doesn't really think it's going to play a large role at the last time I was here, but women are coming out to vote for pro-choice candidates because they feel like their rights are about to be taken away.
It still should be a states' rights issue. I believe it's a states' rights thing. Let the state decide.
And that's in line with the national politics.
Yeah, even though there's a push federally, but it should be a states' rights issue.
And men can't get pregnant. I think we should agree on that at least.
Yeah.
As a father of 4 daughters, I'll agree.
All right.
I get 2 sons, so.
we got to take another break, and we'll be back to wrap up the hub in just a moment. As the Decision 2022 race shapes up, keep it with KUAM News for all the news you need to know as you head to the polls. From weekly candidate profile analysis on the hub on KUAM News Hotspot to our online candidate directory on KUAM.com, special features on KUAM Digital and KUAM News Primetime, plus live coverage of forums and debates. We're your one-stop source on every platform. Stay informed with KUAM News, your news leader, the voice of the Marianas. Okay, we are back for the final few minutes of our show, and before we turn it over to Tomas, of course. Last question. Let's talk about the AG race. Same question. What issues are driving the AG race, and who has the edge? And we've got 3 candidates, actually. We've got Levin Camacho, we've got Doug Moylan, and we've got a write-in candidate, Peter Santos. Let me start with you, Ron, because you've got some strong thoughts about the write-in candidate.
Just
Go
a
ahead.
little strong.
Yeah, I think there are 2 candidates in this race only, and there are 2 named candidates on the ballot, and that's who people are going to be vastly voting for. I think that in general, both of them have good contrasts. I think that Doug and Levin both have done the job, and the public can certainly see the differences. I've got to say that their approach to being Attorney General is very, very different. Doug is very aggressive toward crime. He's a real crime-fighting AG, and Levin seems to be more on the institutional, technical aspects of the job, at least in my impression. So the public have a good set of contrasting choices to make.
All right, Sean?
I think if you get a chance to watch the Guam Bar Association forum, I think that'd be a good way to think about. We have the lawyers asking the lawyers questions about lawyering. If you can get all that into one thing, but when we look at it, I think that the struggle, and I agree with Dr. McNinch that it really is a 2-horse race. That the challenge to the write-in is already going to be pretty big. And Doug and Levin are out there trying to get people to vote for him. The issues of crime are in all of our faces on this newscast on a nightly basis, and then the community has to decide who would be best to solve those issues today, not tomorrow, today.
So you think crime,
I think that's the biggest issue. Prosecuting crime, yeah, it's a big deal.
Crime is it's a big part of any election, right? Senatorial, gubernatorial, the attorney generals. We have two candidates. We have one that was an AG that got voted out and lost the election twice already as an AG, and he got voted out for a reason. And he is aggressive. He says he's aggressive. He wants to enforce federal laws to stop the cannabis industry from starting. He wants to enforce the 1990s abortion law to stop abortion from happening on Guam. So there's a clear contrast, right? We can protect progress and keep moving the Attorney General's office forward, or we can go back to an aggressive person who indicted people 30 times with no convictions. So he got voted out for a reason, and I don't think it's a good reason to bring him back. That's my own opinion.
All right, we're out of time. That's Chris Carillo. That's Shawn Gumataotao. And that's Dr. Ron McNinch. I'm Nestor LaConta. Thanks for watching. Time to turn it over to my colleague, Tomas Maglonia, to continue with the hotspot.